I'm Colleen. This is my first video after having done my song, so I'm very excited and very nervous. So bear with me. Let me tell you a bit about my song. We had waited so long to have a child. It was what I wanted my whole life. I wanted to be a mom and a perfect wife ever since I was little. You know, when you were little and they ask you, what would you like to be when you grow up? And some children would say, an air hostess or a doctor or a vet. I'd say I'd like to be the perfect mother and the perfect wife. And that was my dream forever. But life plays some jokes on you sometimes, and you don't always get what you wish. And that's what happened to me. I made mistakes, and in this case, it was my fiance, it wasn't my husband, which in itself is a mistake because that's not what God wants. But there are reasons for that I will tell you about maybe further along. You know, I was in a complete state of rebellion when I was in that relationship. I hadn't been going to church during the whole time that I was in that relationship. I was with my ex for 10 years. So for the 10 years, I had not gone to church at all for several reasons. Well, I might explain that in another video. And so when I say in my song, pain, I can't bear it, but I must. Crying out loud, oh God, I need your help. Only in you can I trust. I hurt you so. You didn't deserve it. Oh my God, that's what I was referring to. Because our God says clearly that we are supposed to be married. You know, He does not like fornication. He does not like any of that. And there I was in a 10-year-old relationship with a man that was not my husband. So whatever my reasons were for having been in that relationship, God did not want that for me. So my ex had sterility problems, infertility problems, and the only way that we could have had our baby, according to the doctors, was by doing the artificial insemination. So, which was hard for me, not for him. You know, all the hormones on my body, the treatments I had to undergo, and it was really difficult, very, very hard. And you know, with all the hormones that you had to take 14 years ago, 15 years ago, it's not like it is today. So there I was taking these hormones, and I put on 10 kilos in 10 days, and the hormones made me get an ashite, which means that the edema that the hormones provoked went into my lungs, and they had to drain my lungs, went to my heart, and I almost died. Literally. I gained 10 kilos in 10 days, and I was completely disfigured. In 10 days' time, I could not recognize myself. And in the midst of all that, being in the hospital for more than 2 weeks and having to go through so many things just to live and trying not to have the baby aborted spontaneously, my ex and I broke up. It was rough. Now I'm just saying very briefly what happened, but that's a story in itself. We might get to that one day. We broke up. I left him because he had become aggressive, and I didn't know at the time. The doctors explained to me that there are some men that when they undergo fertility treatments, they actually cannot handle the psychological aspects of it. Some of them really do turn against the women that try to help them by undergoing the fertility treatments. It's as though they think that they were not man enough to be able to have a child naturally. So that's what happened in my case. My ex turned against me, and I couldn't understand why. And there I was fighting for my life, and he was aggressive, and I could not understand it, and I would not stand for it. Now the video just to make things very easy for the video, made it look as though he left me. In real life, I was the one that did the leaving, because I was not about to take any man being aggressive towards me, especially after I had put my life in so much jeopardy trying to give him a child. So I was the one that left. I was the one that stayed by myself with no help, with no one there with me for the whole pregnancy. And I was also in a foreign country because I live in Italy. And I had tried to get back home to Trinidad, but the doctor told me that I would lose the baby. And so I had to stay. And all the time I was like, if I stay, I know that I'll be prisoner here. How can I leave? Because he won't let me leave. But then I could not get on a plane because I knew that I would lose the baby, and I just didn't know what to do. So I was in pain all the time, like literally all the time. The baby was growing, and the hormones had provoked multiple cysts, multiple benign tumors, and they were growing with the hormones, with the pregnancy that the pregnancy caused, with all the estrogen and all of that. And the baby was pushing against them the whole time. So I was in constant pain 24/7, and I was bleeding and losing amniotic fluid, and God, I tell you, the pain was constant and it was atrocious, and I literally thought that I would die. I never thought I would live through it. That's when I started to ask God. I said, God, if you don't help me, I will die. Would you give me a minute of life? 1 minute. And I started to close my eyes and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I was so sure when I got to 60 that a minute would have gone by. And instead it would have been like 20 seconds. And to get through a minute it was an eternity. And I honestly thought I'd never make it. But when I did get to 1 minute, I said, God, thank you for giving me 1 minute of life. Thank you so much for helping me through that 1 minute. And I thought, well, if God gave me 1 minute and he made me strong enough to go through 1 minute and to get through 1 minute, then maybe I can get through another minute. And so I would count the seconds leading up to another minute and get to the second minute. And that's how I did it for the whole pregnancy. Literally, I counted minute by minute, and I would always be looking at my clock and counting and looking at the clock and counting. And that's how I got through the day and how I got through the evenings and how I got through the nights. I was literally counting every single minute. And people, like, the few times that someone came to visit me, they would say, well, how do you imagine the baby? He's going to be a mulatto baby. He's mixed baby. Do you think he'll be light-skinned or dark-skinned? How he's going to be? And I was like, I had no clue. I didn't even think I'd get to the point where I would be able to deliver the baby. I didn't even know how to get through the day. I didn't even know how to get through the hour. I was not even thinking about what he would look like or what she would look like. All I was thinking about was, how do I get through this minute? And that's how I literally clung to life minute by minute by minute. Every day, every hour, every minute, for months, until we induced birth at 8.5 months and I had my child. I am thankful to God, though, because if I had not gone through that pregnancy and I had not gone through the extreme isolation, and my ex's family, they were my family. I live in Italy. His family was my family. I loved them. And when we broke up, his family went with him. If it had been my family, my parents would have said, you know what, I don't approve of your behavior. You're my child, but I don't approve of your behavior. But in Italy, things are a bit different. Parents always side with their children, whether they're right or not. And so they simply said, well, if he's acting the way he's acting, you must be at fault. You would drive anybody crazy. I was like, good, thank you so much. And that was it. So God gave me the strength to go through, and God broke me. I was broken. If ever there was a broken woman, I was completely broken. I was completely alone. And I only had God to cling to. Only. I had no friends, really. The one person that would come to visit me was the hairdresser that was underneath my store. I was living in my store at the time, in my waiting room, on a bunk bed, on a camp bed that I had put there. That was it. And she would come visit me after work. But apart from her and one other person, I had no visits at all. So I was completely alone. No one to take me to visits, no one to help me to get to visits. One friend did help me out at one point. It was hard. It was completely hard, complete isolation, just battling to live and battling to keep my child in my belly. And I thank God for his helping me through 1 minute at a time. I thank God. Sometimes, I hear on the TV that some mom had a wonderful pregnancy and then during birth something happened and the baby died, or they had to do a cesarean and the child was in distress and died, or after birth the mom seemed as though she were fine and then she died. And these things happen so very often in Italy, and every time I say, God, I can't even thank you so enough for what you did for me, because I'm in a foreign country by myself. I was in and out of the hospital. I don't know how many months I was hospitalized, but I literally was in hospital at least 3 months, and even more, counting all the time periods together. When I think about what God did for me and how he sustained me and how my faith in him came back, because I had not been to church for a long time, more than 10 years. But I remembered what my parents told me. I grew up in the Pentecostal church. I had a very strict Pentecostal upbringing, which practically led me at a certain point to leave the church entirely. That's another story I'll tell you about one day. So, when they say, train up your children in the way that they grow, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. I started remembering things that my parents had taught me and what we had learned in children's church, and I was clinging to those things while I was pregnant. After years of not having gone to church, I started remembering and I started praying, and I hadn't prayed really for years. I'd be like, thank you, God, for this day. That was it. I wouldn't be praying. And all of this happened. I came back to God when I was pregnant. And if he hadn't broken me the way that he did, I probably would not have come back to God. So I have to thank him. They say in all good things, give thanks. I have to thank God for that. Because if I had died during that pregnancy and death was right here, I could have died at any time. They had to drain my lungs because my pleure, the membranes of my lungs, were filled with water, and I was literally suffocating. Literally. And that was just one thing, but there were all kinds of things when I was pregnant. Literally. I should have died. I would have died. But you see, God had a plan, and here I am. And so when I wrote this song, I actually filmed the video more than a year ago, and I was unable to put it on the web because it's very intimate, I just couldn't find the courage to post the video. It took me more than a year. And I was like, I have no clue as to how to take out videos and cut them and do all the filtering and all of the things that they do when they do videos. But then I just came to the realization the other day that when God tells you to do something, you should just do it to the best of your ability. So for now, this is my first video, and I'm just speaking without knowing how to do anything, but I'm just speaking heart to heart and face to face. And my wish is to encourage some woman, some young lady somewhere in the world. Maybe you've been abandoned, maybe you've been rejected, maybe you have to be in bed, on bed rest, not to lose your baby. All I can tell you is hang on, a minute at a time. God will help you if you ask Him. I am living proof. I am living proof that God, if you ask Him, He will help you. Even if you've done wrong, even if you've lived in sin, if you really, really cry out to Him, He will help you. And if He did it for me, He will do it for you. Honestly, that's what I say in my song. If He did it for me, He will do it for you. I'm a living witness that that's exactly what it is. He will do it for you if you will only ask Him. So my prayer today is that you will find the courage to ask God to help you in the tough times. Everybody goes through something. Everybody goes through something. It might be that you lost your job, that you lost a parent or a loved one, or you're going through a divorce, or you're going through an illness. And everybody has that moment, that period of time when you're in a desert place and things are dry all around you and everything seems to be grim, and it looks as though the devil has taken control of your life and is just running amok with your life. But He is there, and if you ask Him, He will help you. And I pray that you will remember my story and maybe listen to my song and ask God to help you 1 minute at a time, and take courage from that, and let me know how you went through a minute at a time. God bless. Subscribe, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.